Hi, everyone, and welcome to HuntersCON. Super excited to have you with us today. I'm Yuval I'm Hunter's CTO. And with me, I have Francis Odom. Francis is the founder of the Software Analyst Cybersecurity Research, where he analyzes emerging trends within cybersecurity. Previously, he spent a few years covering cybersecurity and infrastructure software development for a VC firm. He has spent years in the IML world, and if he's not reading about cybersecurity, he's running marathons around the world. Francis, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Take it away.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone joining us today. Super excited to have this opportunity to do a presentation today about just evolving trends within the SOC, discussing about the trends that we're seeing currently today between platforms versus best of breed, and just some of the evolutions in terms of security data type solutions on the market today. Thank you again to Hunters for having me. And I hope many of you have so far been learning from many of the great, amazing sessions before me and as well as ahead of me today. It's a pleasure. So today I'm going to be speaking about some evolving trends based off all of my research. And a lot of my research does come from all my work talking to SOC analysts, security leaders, as well as just the ecosystem at large about some of the more evolving trends. So really excited to do this today, and then I'm looking forward to getting your questions at the end of the presentation. Well, let's dive right into it. So when we think about the traditional SOC for most enterprises today, I think what we know for many of you who might be a SOC analyst, tier one, tier two, you could be a security engineer, you could be a security leader. I think this is traditionally and quite frankly still most of what most enterprises have to deal with today in terms of the security architecture, in the sense of you have your EDR tools, you have a number of your network type solutions, you have your identity, you have your email security tools, and a wide variety of those are just a sample case of different types of solutions across your enterprise. You have agents installed on many of those security solutions, and the goal is for you to ingest and collect logs, metrics, event data, and telemetry data from all of those different security tools, and then feed all of that into your traditional SIEM. And when you put that ingest and store all of that into your SIEM, most of your SOC analysts obviously have a number of detection rules they have on that, or you have a threat hunter. Some companies do have threat hunters, where you're doing a lot of your threat hunting on top of your traditional SIEM, help you investigate and just analyze potential threats within your environment. And then further towards the right, you have your triad, your incident response, and then your reporting component to it. So some companies have this stack, they have this architecture in terms of how they run their SOC, or they also have an NDR who just pretty much helps them in terms of taking care of a number of all of these processes as well. But the reason why a lot of these are called traditional SOC and is primarily because I think many organizations today are fed up with they have a lot of challenges that they're facing with this existing architecture, and it just hasn't proven to really scale and be beneficial to many organizations. But many companies still feel really really stuck in terms of how most of the architectures today are set up. And what are some of these reasons? Well, I have six of them that are here that I've outlined, but there are even many more depending on the scale and the type of organization. First has to do with organizations are facing tool sprawl across different security solutions. As we all know today, I think most of the industry data today, from Gartner and IDC, shows that the average enterprise uses close to about 15 to about 30 different type security tools across the organization. And so think about all of those different tools with different types of data sets, different types of data format, and having to ingest all of that into your traditional SIEM that just wasn't set up, quite frankly, for the types of emerging cloud native, AI centric types of tools that we have today. Many of these SIEMs and solutions were built 20 years ago for large on-prem type environment. And so companies are facing just a large amount of different types of tools, and how do they how go about handling most of those? Second to this is organizations are facing challenges around just the spiraling costs that are associated with the ingest and the storage for most of the event logs and metrics coming out of all of these different types of solutions. And this number two is really the biggest problem, at least from my research and from a lot of the research in the industry out there, in terms of just the huge amount of cost to store and retain. And many companies today, quite frankly, are struggling with like, do we even keep some data? Do we actually even ingest some data and leverage that for trade hunting purposes? And when companies are having to face this trade-off of like, do we really secure our environment relative to what's the cost? I think companies are not always in the best types of situations. And so I think this is still one of the biggest problems many companies are facing today. Number three also sees that teams are seeing rapid security data growth and just alerts overload, leading to just fatigue and burnout, quite frankly. And I think this is another big one where lots of security analysts and security teams are just lots of alerts from all of these different tools, and it's just leading to burnout. How do we actually go about keeping up with all of these evolving trends? Number four has to do with staffing and resource constraints. Most of this really has to do with the talent shortage that many teams are facing today, and have to deal with. Most SOC teams globally, quite frankly, are understaffed. And even with the understaffed teams, they have to deal with the first three challenges that we talked about. And then number five really just comes down to the fact that, the threats are not stopping, right? Most of you would have heard from the presentation on InfoStealer as well. Most of these attacks from cyber criminals, hackers, adversaries, as well as nation states continue to grow despite all of these challenges outlined in the first 4 points. And lastly, organizations are just really just faced with vendor locking. Many companies feel like they're stuck with many of their existing legacy tools within their enterprises. And so these are just the highlight of some of the challenges currently facing most of modern SOC teams today. And there are even much more that I could outline, but these are some of the most prominent ones we hear today. So when we think about what the future holds, how do we think about what the future holds to solve a lot of the challenges we just talked about, or many of the difficulties and challenges that we see with some of that traditional SOC process? We see a future whereby really composing of three types of, if you want to call them best of breed types of solutions that will evolve to define a much more simplistic future of the SOC. And they primarily have to do with like your pre-data orchestrator type solutions, or some people call them your pipeline management type solutions that help you with the data ingest component side. You still need to have some type of SIEM or data storage type solution that helps with a lot of the detection and retention of data. And lastly, you need that response component to it that helps you with automation. It could be playbooks and helps you with a lot of the incident response component. But when we think about what the future SOC looks like, this is first of all at a high level, conceptual level of simplifying what that future state does look like. And so now let's go through the multiple different steps that this would entail as we think about the future state of the SOC. So a much more modernized SOC looks like this, whereby obviously we have a lot of our different types of security tools within our enterprises. You might have an agent, you might have agentless type solutions that are attached to those different solutions. And the goal is you need to have some type of ETL, data security ETL, or orchestrator or pipeline type solution to help you aggregate and fine tune all of those data sets into what we generally call as a really good format in terms of enriching and passing a lot of that data. We don't want to just take data from all of our security tools and just mash them all into our traditional SIEM, as I showed early on. We want to have this what we call a data fabric type component, where we have data pipeline tools and data routing type solutions, whereby you're maybe leveraging some type of OCSF framework to help you make sure that the formats that you're using are cross-structured and unstructured data are the right appropriate formats. And so once you aggregate all of that into some type of data fabric like type solution, the goal then is, rather than stuffing all of that into the traditional SIEM as we've seen and some of the cost challenges associated with that, I think what we are seeing now today is companies are saying, hey, you know what? Once we have all of those data being formatted properly, we could send them into our next gen SIEM, we could send them into a multi-data SIEM, or we could send them into our security type data lake. And most of these type solutions are generally built on some type of Power Data Platform or some data warehouse type solution. And I'll show some of the vendors in my next slide. But this is really where what we're seeing today on the market today, at least for forward-looking type organizations, whereby you might want to keep your traditional SIEM in some cases for maybe compliance type purposes or much more audit or reporting type mechanisms. But rather than sending all of your data into your SIEM, now you're actually able to leverage cheaper storage, leveraging some of this more emerging type multi-data next-gen SIEMs or security type data solutions that are all built on the separation of compute and storage that leverages a lot of the cloud major providers or data warehouse type solution. And so this is one way that in which we're seeing this. And then we move down to the response and the automation side of things. And I think with what we're seeing now with the advancements in AI today, I think what we're seeing is when your SIEMs or your security data platforms actually do create alerts, in most cases, instead of sending that out to a SOC analyst, now you're actually able to leverage some type of AI first type automation solutions that helps you with the triage. You could have just really good incident type response that are leveraging a lot more modernized type solutions. Or at the very bottom of that, you're leveraging some type of XDR type solution, which I'll show in my next slide. But when we think about what the future SOC does look like, I think it does encompass into this components whereby across the data ETL and orchestrator, the cloud platforms, as well as the response automation, we have really best of breed solutions at each of these areas. And I'll talk through some of the benefits of leveraging some of this type of architecture today. So when we take that same framework again and we break it down into the types of vendors we might be dealing with, on the data ETL side, obviously many of you are familiar with a lot of your security tools. On the left, your EDR, you're maybe leveraging CrowdStrike or Palo Alto Networks, or if you're using some type of CyberArk, Okta, or you're leveraging Microsoft or Wiz on the cloud. On the data pipeline side, these companies are really about helping you on the engineering and the actual formatting of the different types of data sets. What you're getting from an IP address from your network to security type solutions is very different from the types of telemetry type data and EDR type data. And how do we make sure that those formats, how do we go about really making sure those data sets are in the right format before we put them into our storage type solution? Well, we're leveraging solutions like a Monad, a Castle, a Tenzin, or even Hunters as well too. Could help you with that as well. And then when we come down to the data routing side as well, we have other types of solutions there as well, like Cribble, Augoria, Observo, Hunters as well. And many of these solutions really help you in terms of the enriching, the parsing, and the normalization of data before you send them into your destination. And then right in the middle there, companies are maybe leveraging, again, a type of a Splunk, an Elastic, or Exabeam or Devo. But obviously, as I mentioned early on now, with the benefits of cloud infrastructure, we have new next-gen SIEMs that are built around cheaper storage. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits a number of these vendors have. And you could send your data into those destinations as well. And then lastly, you might you use some of the automation type solutions for your triage and response component to it. Now I bring up XDR because XDR is another architecture that you would hear of very prominently across the industry. And what we see generally is XDR pretty much represents what we just talked about in this modernized SOC platform of your ingest, detect, and response. But pretty much what you have that's core to XDR is you have it's generally built by a lot of your EDR centric type solutions where at the center of the data here is the telemetry data you're getting from your endpoint, but now you're actually enriching that and ingesting other data sets and other logs from your identity tools, your network tools to enrich and contextualize that EDR type data. And then you have some detections on top of that, and then your response component that pretty much explains what we just went through. But the goal of what we're seeing with XDR architectures for some companies is if you don't have the budget to buy a SIEM, a large scale SIEM or a large scale SOAR, or automation type solutions, or even some of your more ingest types, data pipeline solutions, companies and smaller teams and SMBs are moving the route of XDR type solutions as well too. So just wanted to flag that up as an architecture that's evolving today. And then this slide also just goes over in terms of when we think about security data platforms and how the landscape is really evolving. It pretty much goes to what I just explained, whereby we have maybe four types of categories now of different types of data platforms on the market. You still have your legacy security data platforms, that were built during the on-prem days, but obviously are migrating now to the cloud. But still, the challenge many of them face is the cost piece. Second to this is obviously the second architecture that we're seeing, and quite frankly, we're seeing lots of companies from my research going down this route, is your next-gen SIEMs that are all leveraging a security data lake. And the biggest thing they provide, as mentioned earlier on, is just cheaper storage with reduced SIEM licensing costs and much better detection rules, as well as data collection features as well. And then we have your CSP providers as well, who they do provide some benefits on the cost side, but they have limited capabilities in terms of the data sources you're actually able to enrich. And lastly, we've gone over some of what you get from a lot of your XDR type platforms like CrowdStrike, SIEM from Palo, and SentinelOne as well. This slide just really goes over the cost and benefits. It's a data from Snowflake and AngularLogic, where it really just shows the huge difference that companies are seeing from the cost side of things. And because a big part of what's driving this change in the architectures for SIEMs today, quite frankly, or even the SOC, quite frankly, is the cost constraint problem, And I think this chart just shows how much cost, as for how much data you're retaining, how much cost you get to save when you use a Splunk relative to the Snowflake type solution. So to the last phase of our presentation here, we really just want to talk about, okay, now let's just say you're a company trying to decide between a platform versus the best of breed, what are some of the core criteria or key KPIs you really want to track? I think it always comes down to cost, and I think this is the reason why I had a lot of emphasis in my previous slide around your budget and cost constraints. How much cost, how much data are you having to retain, and all of your policies around that. But it really comes down to the cost in terms of how much you have to spend. Operational complexity, scalability concerns is another one. Obviously, with most companies, as you continue to scale, or maybe you're moving more data to the cloud, or you're migrating data, how do you envision that data scaling? That will determine the type of architecture you actually go about leveraging. Staffing constraints is a big one as well. We know about in terms of all of these different tools really require a lot of detection engineering and different programming languages to leverage your search functionalities as well. So those are some of the questions you want to think about in terms of also staffing, in terms of how you manage alerts. Data retention and reporting for regulatory and compliance purposes is a big one as well. Depth of coverage is another one. And then in terms of vendor reliability, viability, as well as thinking about locking. Do you feel comfortable being locked into one vendor relative to the other? So this is just when if you let's just take you want to go with a platform. So most of the SOC platforms today are like your CrowdStrikes of the world. You might have a CrowdStrike, you might have Palo Alto's SIEM product as well, or some components of obviously Splunk as well, where they promise to give you all of those three components that I talked about: the data ingest side, the detection, as well as the response. Obviously, the pros are a unified console, interoperability, and a simplified vendor management. Those are some of the benefits you get with a major platform. But not to go over all of the cons, but one of the biggest cons we observe on the market today, quite frankly, is just the lack today, as of today, on the market today, there's a lack of an integrated platform across all of those three major components that I just talked about. Most of those major platforms who sell themselves as being the platform type solution, they don't have the best capabilities across that data ingest, the detection, and the response side. There's a lot of cost, a lot of times having to migrate, because many of these companies, they have a standard that you have to use the EDR tools, you have to use your agent across all of their solutions to be able to ingest data into their SIEM and the response side as well. So there's a lot of cost. They don't have that specialized depth, and most companies, quite frankly, you face the challenge of being locked in on one single vendor. If you really like EDR with CrowdStrike, you might have to maybe switch if you have to use a different platform. Or if you like Palo Alto's next gen firewalls, you might have to move over to a different platform. And so there's that vendor lock-in, and it's just slower innovation, and architectural tech depth is just not there. But when we think about best of breed type solutions on the market, and these are best of breed type solutions are really the best at those three major components we talked about. What we notice is many of these companies are focused at they focus on being really best at one of those major areas, or two or three of those areas as well. And some examples are, we're seeing the rapid evolution in detection engineering today, and you see threat hunting capabilities. Teams need better capabilities around that, all on the automation side. And what you see is emerging vendors like Hunters, Panther Labs, and many of these next-gen providers are really good. The biggest thing, again, cost always comes down to cost. These best-of-breed solutions really give you that flexibility in terms of cost. And then these companies are able to move faster in terms of innovation. Obviously, the disadvantage with some of the best-of-breed solutions is, yes, you might have to be comfortable dealing with different tool sets, or you might have some integration challenges. However, most companies, at least from my research, are comfortable dealing with those as long as it's saving them cost, and as long as they're getting that specialized capabilities on the front end. So that pretty much wraps up my presentation for the most part. Again, I went through most of these concepts relatively quickly, but if you need more information, you're free to find them on. I've gone in depth into security data platforms and the evolution of data platforms, or no vendor consolidation in the SOC, where I do talk about what are the benefits of best of breed across each of those areas, as well as I talk about security automation type solutions. So with that, I'll wrap it up, and maybe I'll open it up for any questions.
Francis, this was a great overview of the landscape, and a lot of the things you talked about really resonate, and we're seeing how customers who are coming and prospects coming into Hunters, the things that they want is onboarding to be super quick. They want data to be ingested fast. They want it to be coming in from the different vendors that they already have, and a lot of our customers coming in from the best of breed world, and they want to get all of the TDIR stack, basically the detections out of the box, and then investigation and response. And I wanted to ask you regarding, we talked a little about in one of the slides about how we imagine that analysts, in the era of AI now, when we see a lot of advanced capabilities like AI agents coming to life and basically becoming better at reasoning and being able to do a lot of these investigation steps, how do you see modern security teams keeping up with the futures of AI when, thinking about the best of breed of tools that are there today?
Yes, absolutely. I think we're definitely seeing a rapid evolution of AI being incorporated in different parts of the SOC. I think one piece definitely is, detection rules as you as you talked about it. I think many companies and even many lots of SOC analysts do struggle around, a lot of the different types of search and programming languages you need to be able to write detection rules really well. That's still a really, really difficult problem for many companies. And obviously, Hunters obviously does provide a lot of these out of box, but I think AI has a huge opportunity to help teams write more of those better rules, using advanced detections, to help you correlate across different types of complex patterns or helping you better predict, be a lot more proactive in terms of attacking a lot of issues. So I think that's one area we're definitely seeing AI helping in just better threat hunting, capabilities, detection logic, and detection rules. I think another piece of this is the automation side as well too. I think we're definitely due for AI to help us, make a lot of our alert prioritization much more high fidelity, helping with a lot of your playbook type automation as well. And how do we make a lot of triage and response? Quite frankly, how do we cut down on that MTDR time as well for many teams? So I think these are some of the major areas that we expect to see AI play a key role. And definitely there are many vendors out there, and I love a lot of what Hunters is doing here as well. So
amazing. Yeah, we just recently launched our new AI capabilities, which allow you to get one of the things that is very out there in our platform when you come in is the fact that since we connect a lot of the best of breed tools, you get a lot of cybersecurity context when you go to your SOC.Yu. But then a lot of the times you say, okay, I have all of this cybersecurity context, but what do I do with it? It can be overwhelming at times. And one of the features that we've just launched is basically the ability to take all of that knowledge and summarize it for you, basically giving you a TLDR of what happened, and then diving deeper into the incident themselves with statistics and things that we see. And then we also express what the investigation steps that you should be taking within the platform, then navigating you internally to basically get down to the verdict faster. And as you say, we need to be able to reduce the MTTR for these incidents, right? Since we have so many of these alerts, then we really hope that this tool would help the analyst focus their work and get to answers much faster. So we're really excited for it. Yeah.
No, just to add to that, I think I obviously didn't highlight it, but yeah, AI summaries is a big one because when you think about it today, many teams, I mean, a big part of the time a lot of your SOC analysts today spend, quite frankly, is just analyzing logs and reporting and putting all these reports together, passing through alerts. And a lot of the times these are really just false positives. And I think with the use of AI, quite frankly, I think you could use a lot of AI to generate most of the summaries, generate this reporting capabilities in minutes rather than hours. And so this, I do think that feature you guys have rolled out as well is a big piece to help, especially the productivity of many SOC teams. So.
Amazing, Francis. Thank you so much for this. It was eye-opening. It was great to see like the high-level overview of the landscape and really the considerations behind companies thinking about, best of breeds and platforms and what drives these decisions. So thank you so much for your time and happy to see you at HuntersCON.
Thank you very much for having me again, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch and learning from everyone as well. Thank you.
Francis, thank you so much for this great talk. Next up is our CEO, Uri May, in his closing remarks. So we'll catch you right there.